Hello again, everybody. We're back here on Gamecock Central Radio. Glad to have you along. Emerson Phillips, joined by Wes Mitchell. We're talking Gamecock football today. Wes, the 4th of July has come and gone. Hope yours was pleasant. And it's really after the 4th, Wes, that I think a lot of people start to turn their attention to the start of the new college football season. Preseason awards watch lists coming out. We got a couple of Gamecocks named to a couple of those that we're going to talk about today. And once the 4th is over with, Wes, and people got their summer vacations out of the way for the most part, people starting to get ready for college football. That's about where we are right now.
Yeah, and I think, Emerson, if you look, on the TV, too, it seems like they've started to play, past games. I was looking at SEC Network, ESPN, like the Fox Sports net, different networks around the country. Lots of old football games being played, lots of games from last year being replayed on there. So I think that sort of serves as a way to start getting people excited as well. And, before we know it, fall camp will be here in South Carolina, of course, kicks off their season on Thursday, sort of that it's almost become a tradition most years for South Carolina to be one of those first games. So believe it or not, it'll be here before we know it.
That's right. The Gamecocks kick off the 2016 season 8 weeks from today. We're 56 days until Gamecock kickoff. Thursday night, September the 1st, 8 o'clock kickoff at Vanderbilt. The Gamecocks' first 2 games will be on the road, and then the home opener will not be until Saturday, September the 17th. So kind of a late start for the first home game of the year this year, and it will certainly be interesting to see how things go under new head coach Will Muschamp. So we're getting ready for the start of the new season. And, Wes, we got a couple items we can talk about here. Before we get into a conversation on SEC Media Days, which will take place next week in Hoover, Alabama, I wanted to talk about a couple of these preseason watch lists, a couple of Gamecock players named to a couple of the preseason awards watch lists, including Gamecock center Alan Knott Jr., one of 8 SEC players on the 62-player list for the Remington Trophy watch list. 17 career starts for Alan Knott. That is top among returning offensive players for the Gamecocks, and that's third most on the Gamecock team. Knott started 9 games a year ago. Finalists for the Remington Trophy will be announced on December the 5th, with the winner being announced on January the 14th. And Gamecock place kicker Elliott Fry has been named to the preseason watch list for the Lou Groza Collegiate Place Kicker Award. Fry, one of 30 players named to that preseason watch list. Fry has started all 3 years at South Carolina. He's made 124 consecutive PATs. That is a school record. He's second in the Gamecocks career list with 289 points, and he's made 81% of his field goals under 50 yards while at South Carolina. Last year he was 20 of 28 on field goals, and he made all 25 of his points after. The winner for the Lou Groza Award will be announced Thursday, December the 8th, during the Home Depot College Football Award Show. So during the month of July, West, we get a lot of this preseason awards and watch lists and names to keep an eye on, and a lot of folks making a lot of these lists. 62 players on the Remington Trophy watch list. So this is kind of standard fare for the month of July.
Yeah, I think if you're a returning starting center, it seems like chances are you're going to find your way onto that list. But still, never a bad thing. I think especially Emerson with a team that's probably going to lack a lot of these recognitions going into the season, as far as just not very many proven guys that I think are going to get a lot of national attention. If Sky Moore were to be healthy, then obviously I think he's a guy that's on all your preseason all-SEC list and, watch lists and stuff like that for his position. But otherwise, I think, wow, you look at, Elliott Fry, Sean Kelly, the punter, he comes back. Those are 2 proven guys. Other than that, obviously Alan Knott getting his recognition. He was a finalist last year, too, if I remember correctly. Just probably not going to be many national preseason watch lists that have a bunch of Gamecocks on them. So certainly a good honor for those 2 guys. And, I think this South Carolina team, for the most part, is going to sort of fly in under the radar.
Emerson Phillips with Wes Mitchell here on Gamecock Central Radio. We invite you to download the Gamecock Central Radio app. It's available on the App Store and on Google Play. You can listen to Gamecock Central Radio on the GCR app anywhere you receive cell phone service. You can hear these podcasts. To subscribe, search for Gamecock Central Radio on iTunes, SoundCloud, or other popular services, or just visit radio.GamecockCentral.com. Wes, SEC Media Days get underway next week in Hoover, Alabama. They'll start on Monday, July the 11th, and we've got 4 days of SEC football media day coverage. The Gamecocks will address the media on the last day of media days. Thursday, July 14th will be the Gamecocks Day. And as per usual, each school gets to bring 3 players to the media day event in Hoover. And just this week, the Gamecocks' 3 representatives were announced. It'll be senior offensive tackle Mason Zandy out of Chapin, redshirt sophomore wide receiver Debo Samuel out of Chapman High School here in South Carolina, and senior defensive end Quay Lewis, who was originally from Greenwood, South Carolina. So we got 3 in-state products representing the Gamecocks at Media Days next week, and that event is always a circus, and it figures to be again this year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It almost always is. The media will find some type of headline to grab on. I think, Tennessee probably going to be the media favorite to win the SEC East. Now, being the media favorite out there hasn't always necessarily been a good thing. I don't think the media as a whole has necessarily been that successful at picking champions at SEC Media Day. I think, a lot of times a team that just has more known commodities is going to be expressed to be a better team than maybe a team that has more unknowns, whereas, sometimes those unknowns, a guy replacing a guy can be better, than the previous player. So, I think for the most part, though, go into it, Tennessee probably feels like they're going to be the favorite. I would not expect, if you're a Gamecock fan, listen to this, I wouldn't have an expectation for South Carolina to be picked too high out there. I'm honestly thinking you could probably see South Carolina picked 6th in the SEC East by the media. So that to me, though, would be interesting to see what type of perception there is. I would expect, obviously, Will Muschamp to get a lot of questions about his Florida tenure, lots of questions about what he's learned at Florida. Just stuff that probably has already hit the rounds here in Columbia with Will Muschamp, probably going to all get completely rehashed in Alabama next week.
Wes, how do you think Will Muschamp feels about that? He's got to know he's going to receive a lot of questions about, expectations maybe not being met at Florida. And I would think that he's probably pretty positive about it because he's got an opportunity to prove that he can coach at the highest level in the SEC now that he's gotten the South Carolina job. I would think, it's going to be something that he's looking forward to kind of putting to bed and turning people's attention toward Gamecock football as opposed to, having the media focus on what Florida did or did not do when he was in Gainesville.
Yeah, I doubt there's a new question that anybody can come up with. He's heard these questions before. A lot of it's going to be about what you learn, what do you want to do differently, what would you have done differently, and stuff like that. And I think Muschamp, until they can do it on the field, he's going to have to face a lot of that. There's going to be a lot of negative perception from the SEC and the national media. I think you look. There was a CBS sort of article from Dennis Dodd where he basically put the different coaches in the entire country on, either on the hot seat or not on the hot seat. And basically a 1 or a 0 meant that you were absolutely 100% safe. A 5 meant you better win right now or you're out. Muschamp was put right in the middle of that as a 3 that basically, you're safe for now, and was dubbed as basically the hottest seat of all the newcomers in the country, which to me was pretty absurd because, this is his first year in Columbia. Everyone with any knowledge of this program knows it's going to be a bit of a rebuild. They're going to have to recruit their way out of this. Expectations for right now are extremely, extremely low. So I think the man deserves a little bit of, of that honeymoon period to try to turn this thing around. But I think fans just sort of have to accept that there's going to be some negative perception out there from outside media, and they're just going to have to almost accept it and expect it, and then, of course, hope that Muschamp can sort of turn that around on the field because, right now the expectations are just not going to be high.
Right. I wonder how much negativity may come from Gainesville, Florida media or media members from Florida who covered Muschamp when he was in Gainesville. That'll be interesting to see. And, this will be one of the topics that will no doubt come up next week in Hoover for SEC Media Days. And, Wes, it seems like, going back to your comment just a moment ago, it seems like Muschamp has not had much, if any, of a honeymoon period. There was so much emphasis placed on getting busy on the recruiting trail throughout the search for a new head coach. I think Muschamp knew coming in that was priority one. We've talked repeatedly here on Gamecock Central Radio about the need for the new head coach to hit the ground running with recruiting. And Muschamp, if he's demonstrated one thing and one thing only to this point, and granted he hasn't coached a game yet, but if he's demonstrated anything, it's that he and his staff are going to beat the bushes on the recruiting trail. So it doesn't feel like Muschamp has had much of a honeymoon period because he's been so busy getting to work with recruiting.
Yeah, and I think I think he deserves a little bit of a honeymoon period because this is a 3-9 football team last year, and they lost arguably. I mean, they lost their two best players. It is what it is. Pharaoh Cooper obviously is with the St. Louis Rams now, and Sky Moore is injured. So you take your two best players and remove them from a 3-9 football team. People are going to have to realize, because I think you're probably going to get a national perception where they're going to say, well, Muschamp failed at Florida. How's he going to win at South Carolina? And then they're going to turn around, probably, Emerson, and use the fact if South Carolina doesn't win on the field this year to try to back up that claim, when really that's not fair. If Urban Meyer, just to throw a random coach out there, took over this football program, everyone would be excited as they could be about that, but the national media would be saying, you got to give this guy, a couple of years to turn this thing around. To me, it realistically is going to take, Muschamp 3 years to really start to get his guys in here to where you say, okay, now's the point where the expectations need to go back up. But, I get the sense that Muschamp has sort of blocked all that out. I think the coaching staff, from what I've heard, they're excited about the possibilities. They're excited about the chances here. They truly believe they can win at South Carolina. But, I think us here locally, we just have to acknowledge that it is going to take some time.
Right. Pharaoh Cooper's gone to the NFL. Sky Moore lost for the year due to injury. The Gamecocks also lose a couple of top running backs. Brandon Wilds was the leading rusher a year ago. Sean Carson, a veteran player, kind of a situational player who did a lot of good things for Gamecock football. All these guys are gone, and this is off a team that went 3-9 a year ago. So I think it's very fair to say that expectations will be low indeed going into this 2016 season. So Muschamp's got his work cut out for him. New staff in place here in Columbia as the Gamecocks get ready for the start of the 2016 season. Wes, let's talk about media days a little bit before we wrap it up. Mason Zandy, Debo Samuel, Quay Lewis, the three players selected to represent the Gamecocks at SEC Media Days. Talk about those three and why they were selected.
Yeah, somebody asked me to guess my three. And I was one of three. I did have Quay Lewis. He was one of my guesses. I said Quay Lewis, Perry Orth, and Bryson Allen Williams were my three guesses. Of course, Muschamp going with Quay Lewis, Debo Samuel, and Mason Zandy. I think, one, that speaks to how important those three guys are going to be, for South Carolina this year. It speaks to the buy-in from those three guys. I think you're only going to send guys out there who have bought into your program, who are good faces for your program, who are going to put out good positive energy, have positive things to say. And, I think everybody knows Debo Samuel is going to need to perform for South Carolina this year. So I think that's a positive there. And then, Mason Zandy, probably, it's probably not quite as known even locally among the fan base how funny of a guy Mason Zandy can be. He's a pretty animated character. He's very, very quotable. You know, I could actually see him going out there and sort of almost stealing the show a little bit as far as the 3 South Carolina guys go. So, you know, I think it makes sense to pick an offensive lineman because this offensive line, you know, in a lot of ways, they're going to need the offensive line to sort of anchor this offense, especially early on. So, and then Quay Lewis, I think quietly is going to have a very, very big year for South Carolina. It's never easy for junior college guys, even to play right away and, you know, to be absolutely dominant. But normally you see those guys after a full year under their belt, they take a big jump forward in their senior year. So I think Quay Lewis, who is an outstanding kid, a hard worker, sort of one of those guys that's not really outspoken, sort of puts his head down and goes to work. You know, I think you can expect a big season from him as well. So the 3 guys do make a lot of sense.
All 3 of these young men, assets for the Gamecock football program. Quay Lewis, highly touted coming in from the junior college ranks, and I think was expected or the hope was that he would make an immediate impact with the pass rush, and he did have a good year as a pass rusher last year. Didn't light the earth on fire with his sack totals, but I think he was a lot better against the run than many people thought he would be coming into SEC play. And Mason Zandy, an interesting player, and that, you know, if I'm not mistaken, Wes, at one point he was a 2-star prospect at Chapin High, but he's such a large physical specimen. You know, you can't coach a kid or teach a kid to be 6'8", like Mason Zandy is, and he's really taken well to the college level and has really put his nose to the grindstone, like you said, and has bought into the program. And Debo Samuel, bitten by the injury bug a little bit last year. This was an electric player out of Chapman High School. He's one of the best high school players in the state his last couple of years at Chapman High, but bugged by injuries last year kept him off of the field. I think a lot of folks felt like he was going to break out last year, but that never happened due to the fact that he missed so much time due to injury. So expectations, I think, still very high for Debo Samuel. And, you know, as a Gamecock fan, I'm excited to see what he can do to help this football team because the Gamecocks are going to need help at wideout, and he's the top returner at that position.
Yeah, he's going to have to be the guy, and I think everybody knows that. And, you know, Mason Zandy's going to have to hold down that left tackle spot for South Carolina. And, you know, he's sort of grown into his body. He was taken as a guy that, you know, was basically a tight end at one point in his career, and you grow him into an offensive tackle, and that transition has worked. And then, like you said, Quay Lewis didn't really put up staggering numbers, but I think if you look back to last year, probably was South Carolina's most consistent performer on the defensive line. You know, sometimes those guys just don't get noticed if they're not sacking the quarterback, but that doesn't mean that they, you know, aren't doing their job. So I think he had a better year probably last year than he was given credit for, and I think with a new coaching staff on the defensive side of the ball, I think you could see his talent shine. So I think you can put it this way for sure. If South Carolina is going to, you know, reach some of their goals next year, and, you know, I sort of put the baseline as make a bowl. I think, you know, a major step forward, find a way to get to a bowl. That's something you can build off of. You get that extra practice. So with that as sort of my baseline, I think you could very accurately say for South Carolina to make a bowl, all 3 of those guys that are going to be in Hoover for SEC Media Days need to perform for the Gamecocks. I think those are 3 very, very important players for them.
Yeah, a 6-win season in 2016 would double the win total from a year ago. You got to keep things in perspective as we get the Will Muschamp era underway. The countdown to kickoff has begun in earnest. 56 days until the Gamecocks kick it off on Thursday night, September the 1st at Vanderbilt. That will be an 8 o'clock Eastern kick time. All right, Wes, we got SEC Media Day starting on Monday. The Gamecocks will meet the media on Thursday next week in Hoover, and we'll have plenty more to come on that and a lot more here on Gamecock Central Radio. We appreciate your time as always.
All right, Emerson, looking forward to the next one, man. We'll talk to you then.
All right, that's Wes Mitchell, and I'm Emerson Phillips, and this is Gamecock Central Radio. Thanks for being with us.